All right. Hello, everyone. Hopefully, you're doing well. Thank you for joining us today. This is one of the episodes of Self Care Improving the Quality of Life series by the Brahma Kumaris. Just some quick housekeeping. Feel free to use the chat and feel free to log into your Gmail accounts if you can't access that feature. That being said, we're going to jump straight into it today. And our virtue today is humility. Yeah. All right. So, we're going to play a little exercise. We're going to do, I'm going to tell you a word and you're going to tell me what's the first thing that comes to your mind, okay? Mm-hmm. So we'll start with humble. What's the first thing that came to your mind? Kind. Nice. Yeah. Mine was innocent. Mm-hmm. What about ego? Rude. Self-centered. Mine was arrogant. Yeah. And then what about insecure? Insecure? Fear. All right, but that's good. All right. So now we're going to jump straight into it and we're going to talk about what humility is, right? That's the topic of today. So anyone have any idea what humility is? Humbleness, yeah. So I'll just go straight into it. So it's a modest view on one's importance, right? That's one's importance, what you think of yourself, right? It's a modest view on that. It's also that no one has special importance that makes you better than anyone else, right? Someone who's humble does not think they're better than anyone else. After all, we are all human beings, right? Naturally, no one's supposed to be better than the other, but in the society we live in today makes us competitive, makes us want to be better than other people, and that's what we're going to dive into today, right? So now I'm going to ask something. So what does humility mean to you specifically? So I'll give you an example. For me, it's knowing that everybody at the end of the day is a human being, right? So no one is better than anyone else. That's my definition of humility. When I think of a humble person, I think of someone that treats everyone the same, you know? So I just want you to think, just brainstorm, and think what humility means to you. I'll give you just a few seconds. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's no right or wrong answer. That's my personal definition, right? Some people think humility is about themselves, right? Not boasting too much of your achievements. That's totally a valid of your definition of it. But mine is just, that's mine, and hopefully you guys thought of yours. All right, so now we're going to go, just feel free to shout out, what are some traits that you think a humble person embodies? Or what are some traits that they really exhibit? Down to earth, that's good. Helpful, yes. Loving, good. Good. So you've all heard this, treat others how you want to be treated. That's what really comes to mind when I think, right? And you can see that's kind of correlated to my definition of humility, right? So it just should be personalized for you, you know? And then another, I've wrote down some of the common ones I found on the internet. Knowing your self-image, right? Knowing how you perceive yourself. A lot of people, they don't know who they are, right? They'll be like, there's this thing called the imposter syndrome nowadays. When people achieve stuff, right? They doubt themselves, right? And people don't really know who they are. And then a last one is not showing off, right? That's a big thing in nowadays when everything's online, right? It's easy for someone to go and post a picture of an achievement, an award. But why are they doing it? What's the reason behind that picture? Is it to bring themselves up? Is it to put others down? Or is it just to make themselves feel good, right? So those are just some traits that a humble person embodies. So now we're going to just shift to, I know we already touched on this, some of the feelings. I want you to feel when you're talking to a humble person, when you meet a humble person, you said down to earth, right? What are some others? There was kindness. But yeah, so some I have down here is the biggest one for me is you can feel contentment, right? They're going to be content with their lives. A humble person is not looking for you to be like, do I look good today, right? They're not looking for you to be like, am I smart? Or they don't necessarily base their self-worth on your opinion, right? So that's contentment. They're very, very fulfilled, right? They live a simple life, not a life of intricate designer clothes, just to appear something that they might not be, right? They have no expectations, right? They have a happier outlook on life, and they have positive thoughts. With all these feelings combined, what type of decisions do you think that they'll end up making? Good or bad? Good. Yeah. It's very clear. It's no cloudy judgment, right? And that in turn brings out the best in you, right? You want to be around those people who are humble, who know what they're worth and know what you're worth as well, who treat you how you want to be treated, right? And that's who the people you want to be around. So now let's go the flip side, right? What do you feel when you're around either an arrogant person, prideful person with low self-esteem as well, insecure? Negative thoughts, that's good. Negative thoughts. Yeah, so you can often feel dissatisfaction in their life, right? You can feel that sense of they don't know really, they don't have a clear objective. It makes you uneasy, right? It makes you think that they have a complex life. They have a poor outlook on life because they're resorting to putting you down. And this all accumulates for you to make the worst decisions, right? For that person, a person who's not humble, they will make more uneasy because they have more negative outlook on life and poor decisions, right? And that's the people that bring out the bad in you, right? I know one of my parents always said, be very selective with your friends, right? That's a thing that a lot of parents say because the environment around you shapes who you are, right? So if you hang around these arrogant and prideful people, right, you're going to become one of them, whether you like it or not, right? And just a quick example, right? Arrogant, prideful people, right? How do they bring themselves up? By putting you down, right? I got this achievement, right? I did this, I did that. But subtly, it's going to be to put you down, right? And that's is that something you want for someone you want to be around? No, right? All right, so we talked about humble people and we talked about the opposite, whether it be prideful, arrogant. What do you guys think is the biggest difference? I know I touched on this word once. What's the biggest difference between these two sets of people? Humble people, and then the bingo. Contentment. Yes, that's very good. So we talked about this. People who are humble have a positive outlook on life, right? And are content with the outcomes they achieve regardless of what they are. That's the biggest thing, right? Humble people, content people know they cannot change the decisions. They can't change the past. They can't change the future, right? They know the only thing that they can do, right, is be content with what's given to them, right? And they recognize that there's up and downs in life, right? And accept it. That's a big word, acceptance, right? That's one of the biggest hurdles in life. Accepting who you are, accepting where you come from, all these different things. Acceptance is one of the biggest barriers. So people that are content accept this. On the other hand, people who aren't have a negative outlook on life, right? And what does this negative outlook lead to them? It's that they aren't content and with the outcomes in their own life. So they resort to looking at others, comparing with others. When you're not content with your own life, what are we gonna do? We're gonna go on social media. We're gonna find someone who we want to be like, right? Whether it be a celebrity or someone famous, and you're gonna be like, oh, I wish I could be like them. Or it could be the opposite. When you're not happy with yourself, you resort to putting others down, right? You can be like, oh, look at this award I got, right? Do you have that award? And is that gonna be beneficial? No, it's just gonna worsen your state of mind. So this contentment is the biggest difference between a humble person and a prideful, arrogant person. So how does this relate to our series, Self-Care, Improving the Quality of Life, right? Well, I'm going to read you a quick quote by Confucius, I believe is how you pronounce it. He's a Chinese philosopher. Anyone know him? No? He was a very famous Chinese philosopher from the early, like hundreds of years ago. And he said humility is a solid foundation for all the virtues, right? Humility is a solid foundation for all the virtues, right? Can you be like kind without being humble? Not necessarily, right? Because you're still going to be looking at other people. And this applies to all these virtues, right? So you need humility in order to improve the self-care, right? To improve the quality of your life, right? So only when you are content, you are humble, right? But when you are not content, what are you going to do? You're not going to be humble. And then it's going to be 10 times harder for you to be kind, for you to be loving, for you to be peaceful, all of these, right? So that's why if we can attack humility and we can really conquer this obstacle, we can really move on to the next level, and that'll bring us to a higher stage in life. So now what we're going to do, we're going to do a quick internal reflection. So all I want you to do, recall we did at the start, what is humility to you, right? We asked that question, right? So in order to grow yourself, right, you need to know where you need to grow. And we defined what humility is to you because that's what you want to be at, whether you're already there or not. But that's the point of this. I want you to assess where you are. Do you think, just take a scale of 1 to 5, right? 1 being humble. On a scale of 1 to 5, just internal reflection. How humble do you think you are? This can be your own self-perception. It doesn't matter what others think. Others can think you're a 5, others can think you're a 1. All that matters is what you think of yourself. And that's what you're going to work on, right? If someone tells you you're not humble, right? You're going to have to, that's not a motivator as much, right? Their opinion should not be the motivating factor for you to change yourself. So just take a minute, just think, my definition, comparing to my definition of humble, right? On a scale of 1 to 5, how humble do you think I am, right? How humble do you think I am? And we're just going to do that for a minute. Cool. So I'm assuming everyone wants a 1, right? Everyone wants to be humble in life, right? No one wants a 5? Sure? Okay. Well, yeah. So it's pretty standard that everyone wants to live a humble life, right? But again, it's a reoccurring theme in these episodes where it's like it's easier said than done. I can be humble, I can be kind, I can be honest, I can be all of these, right? But it's easier said than done, right? So I want to talk a bit about my personal experience. So for me, first of all, my 1, or what I defined as that 1, is I want to know my own self-worth, right? And not seek others' approvals, right? And then this will like help me detach from materialistic things and be more content with life, right? Contentment equals humility. So, talking a bit about my personal experience with humility. I grew up in a very fortunate household, right? I did not have to suffer, and honestly, I think I've had a lot of things handed to me, right? It's funny, I've done a lot of interviews in the past year, and one of the main questions they ask, right, is how have you failed and how have you learned from it? The problem with that, right, is I have been so grateful and I've been so lucky that I have not had a major failure in my life that I can recall upon. Of course, there's many failures, and that's basically because that I've had God's hand in this all the time, right? So, again, I was fortunate enough not to fail very hard. And that's something I know a lot of people can't say, right? But it's something that I don't take for granted, right? I've also worked really hard, but I've also used different resources around me to help me get to where I am today, right? So, humility, right? Although I am beyond grateful, right? And I have everything from the basic needs, right? From food, water, shelter, to even beyond that, right? I have access to a car, I have access to leisure, I have access to recreation, I have all these things, right? Yet, why do I still seek others' approvals, right? That's a question I think I've asked myself many times, right? and I'm sure a lot of other people have, right? Looking at my life, looking at what I've accomplished, right? I can confidently say like that I am very proud of myself, right? Yet, why do I see someone else win an achievement, win an award, and be like, I want that award, right? Why is that? So, one thing I'll tell you about a personal experience of mine is with something called LinkedIn. I don't know if you guys know what it is, right? And yeah, it's a funny platform because personally I'm a business student, right? Going into my second year, and business is is very unique compared to other concentration. Why? Because the competitiveness is much higher, and the publication of awards and displays and all these are displayed to a much higher extent. In business, it's almost a norm to have LinkedIn, right? Why? Because that's going to help you get the job, right? So when I first heard of LinkedIn, right? What LinkedIn is showing all your achievements, all your awards in order to outcompete everyone else and get maybe an internship, maybe a job, whatever it is, right? I felt unease when I first heard of this. Why? Did I want to publicly display all my accomplishments, my achievements? My first thought was, why do I have to display this, right? Why do I have to show all my achievements, right? I didn't want to be perceived as someone that I'm not, right? I didn't want to be perceived as someone who's trying to show off all these awards, show off. Yet, I still ended up making an account. Why? Because that's society's norm, right? And that's one thing about society. It doesn't push us towards an anti-competitive life, right? Society is all about competition, right? You're competing for the job, you're competing for whatever, right? And through this competition, you basically undermine some of your humility, right? You have to embody some characteristics, whether you like it or not, whether that be a bit of ego, a bit of pride, a bit of showing off, right? In order to get that job, right? So the big question is here. I kind of asked myself, returning to the previous question, why does it make a difference to me what others view me as, right? Why does it make a difference that, say, I view an award of someone else on LinkedIn, right? Why does that internally make me feel a bit sad, right? Why does it do that? I'm going to relate this to a story. So the story's called The Prideful Ant. Funny story. Okay. So I'll just read it out loud, and I want you just to think of the moral. Obviously, it's going to be related to humility. Well, hopefully it is. But yeah, just think of the message behind the story. So once upon a time, there was a very proud ant living in the ant colony with his hardworking sisters and brothers. Every time they moved to a new place, they worked together to build their new home. Everyone had a job and worked happily for the good of the colony. The pride ant didn't like working with their sisters and brothers because nobody recognized its efforts and talents. One day, the proud ant decided to start a project of its own, a high tower, right next to the ant colony so everyone can see what a great, smart, hardworking, and talented ant he was. He started working and working day and night. He would go to the forest, climb the trees to build the tower. He would go to the river to make mud for the tower. The little ant got tired every day more and more. His sisters and brothers watched him with worry. They tried to offer him help, but he kept repeating, "Leave me alone, and you'll see the greatest tower you have ever seen." One day, the little ant was carrying a leaf over a large branch over the river. The ant was so tired that he suddenly slipped and fell asleep for a few seconds. Those seconds were enough for him to lose balance, and he ultimately ended up slipping. The little ant cried for help while hanging from the branch over the roaring water. The sisters and brothers heard him and ran to save him, but after they saved him, he didn't even say thank you. He walked away saying, "Why did you help me? I could have done it myself. I don't need you. I'm strong and smart. Now let me go finish the greatest tower you have ever seen." The proud ant worked all that night and finished the tower by the morning. It was an impressive tower with windows and large rooms inside. He stepped in the balcony and said loudly, "Come, sisters and brothers, come in and admire my work. I invite you all to the opening ceremony of the greatest tower of all time." Nobody answered. He looked down and saw all of them playing together, having a big dinner. just ignoring him. After a while, the proud ant understood, and with great sorrow walked down and stood in the middle of the brothers and sisters. Looking down, and with a sad tone, said, I know you don't want to see me, but I just want to say I'm really sorry. I really needed your help when I was building the tower, and I was really thankful that you saved me. But my pride wouldn't let me accept your help or say thank you. I am sorry. I don't want to bother you over anymore. I'll move and leave my tower to you. Goodbye. The little ant started walking away, but the rest of the ants stopped him and said, you did wrong, but you're still our family, right? So we forgive you, and everyone makes mistakes, but the greatest part is when you learn from them, and then happily ever after. Woo. Yeah. But yeah, I just want you to take 2 seconds and just think about the story, think about what you liked, maybe what you didn't like, and what you really learned from it. Okay, 10 seconds is enough. All right. So anyone have any comments first? No comments. Oh, I'm doing a bad. No, I'm kidding. No. So the biggest thing is he wanted to be appreciated, right? Where does this all stem from, right? He wanted to be appreciated. He wanted to be appreciated for his work, right? In the colony, no one praises each other. They all have a job and no one is better than one another, right? But he wanted that recognition, right? And he wanted that sense of pride. This exhibited one key thing. Looking for appreciation outside will never lead to a humble life, right? We touched on this. Whether you look for appreciation on social media by posting a picture, or you seek appreciation like the ant did, right? You're not going to achieve a humble life. Right? So why does it make a difference if others, right? If other people view your accomplishments or not, right? In the end, you saw that the ant didn't end up having his accomplishments admired, even though it was a pretty big accomplishment, right? When he did it for the wrong intentions. And for that reason, it wasn't admired, right? So that's just, I'll keep referring back to the story now, but now I'm going to ask you another question. So what stops us and distracts us from living a humble life, right? So what's a big motivator for people to have ego, to have pride, to have comparison? Yeah, that's good. So I have down here trying to be looked highly upon for something or someone that isn't yourself, right? It all stems because you care what people think of you, right? Well, maybe you don't. I do, right? So when you place your personal perception, what you think of yourself, in the hands of others, right? You're never going to achieve humility, right? And it will always fail. Why? Because how they view you is out of your control, right? Can you control how someone thinks of you? No. But you can try to influence it. Why? How? Designer clothes, right? Fancy clothes, maybe fancy chains, fancy jewelry, right? This can all be influenced, right? But again, this is going to lead to a complex life. And at the end, you got, say, a small piece of jewelry. There'll always be a bigger piece of jewelry, right? Mm-hmm. And that jewelry will get old, and that car will get old, right? Everything will get old. So living a life that depends on this external aspect of society will never lead to contentment. And when it doesn't lead to contentment, it won't lead to humility, right? So, all right, now we're going to compare external factors first. So, does anyone have any ideas of the two main external factors that influence our personal perception of ourselves? Society. Good. Anyone else?
Social media.
Yeah, I said others, right? But that's others contribute to social media, right? Mm-hmm. One's going to be people, right? And second's going to be society. Mm-hmm. So we'll start with people. This is the question of how do you want others to view you, right? That's basically what it comes down to. When talking about humility, right? You want to ask yourself, how do you want others to view you? So valuing your personal perception based on others will not make you humble. We saw that in the ant story, right? He wanted that appreciation. He wanted to be better than them, right? But in the end, he valued himself based on what others thought of him. And since others weren't appreciating him, that's why he built the tower, right? So was he happy in the end? Did he accomplish anything? Did he accomplish that he's better than anyone, or that he is humble or more content than anyone? No, right? So this need to feel approved, right, is what really approved and appreciated is what really fuels, right, why we want others to view us very highly. So when you are not content with your personal perception of yourself, you will start to look for others to provide this for you, right? You'll look for someone else to appreciate you when you can't appreciate yourself. So only when you are content will you not expect from others. And expectation is a really big thing nowadays in society, right? It's almost impossible to find someone, right, who will do something for you, right, and not even have the slightest inkling of an expectation back, right? When you are content, right, you're not going to expect this appreciation, expect this approval from others. But when you are not content and when you are not embodying an aspect of humility, right, you're going to expect others to provide it for you, which is the biggest thing, right? Okay. Next is society. So how, again, people were how you want to be viewed by others. Now it's how do you want to be viewed by society. So valuing your personal perception based on society will put you against other people. We talked about this. Competition, right? Society doesn't be like, oh, everyone's happy, everyone will be the same, right? Society is like, you have to outcompete everyone, right? You need to become more successful. You need to have more money based on society's standards, right? So this is all to do with your societal image, right? What's the image of you in society, right? Now, if you look to society to view yourself as successful, it's pretty explanatory that you'll never succeed, right? Because there's always higher boundaries to go, right? Sure, you may have got the job you wanted, but after a year or two, there's always that next job you want, right? And thus, people also go to social media to be content with themselves, right? They expect to get those likes on Instagram. They expect to be viewed as someone who's what they want to be viewed as, right? You post a picture, ask yourself the next time you post a picture, right? Is it to please others? Is it to get others' approvals? Or is it to please myself or approve myself, right? There's so many different aspects to why people can post a picture on social media. Maybe they just wanted to share something, but maybe they wanted approval, and this is all because of society, right? Society shapes us against each other, right? And are you going to live a satisfied life or a dissatisfied life because of this? Dissatisfied, right? So that's a big thing. So we're going to kind of divide it into two sections. So one's going to be an individual with low self-esteem, right? So what that individual with low self-esteem is going to do is they're going to seek value from others. That individual with low self-esteem, right, does not value themselves very highly, right? So they're going to seek that value in other places. They're going to seek it from others, right? But they're also going to try to get approved by others, right? They're seeking value and approval by others. So they're also going to show a little bit of ego, a little bit of pride, how showing off accomplishments, doing this, doing that, right? Is that going to lead you to live a humble life? No, right? So people don't value themselves and lack a bit of self-respect, right? And that's ultimately what leads to this. On the flip side, right, we have people with high self-esteem or arrogant people, egotistical. They act like they are better than others, right? And when you act like you are better than others, not only are you boosting yourself, but you're boosting yourself at the expense of others. There's also, you show off achievements to discourage others. So before they showed off achievements to really boost themselves, this is to discourage others, right? And that's the dangers of ego and pride and arrogance, right? Is really you're doing more harm to people than you're gaining goodness for yourself, right? So again, they value their accomplishments, whatever materialistic things they have, too highly. So on one hand, we have low self-esteem, and on the other hand, we have high self-esteem, right? We established that the extremes are not that good, right? So what do we need to do? We need to find a balance, right? Balance of self-esteem. So only the correct balance of self-esteem can one recognize their own importance. Humility is valuing one's own importance, right? So only through, if you have a balanced self-esteem. If you're too low, right, you're going to seek approvals. If you're too high, you're going to discourage others and put others down, right? You need to find a balance where you value yourself, right? But you also value others, right? So this is achieved when you look inside, right? We talked about the two external factors. We talked about society and people, right? They're never going to bring you contentment, right? And they can never bring you humility, right? So that means you can only attain it when you look inside yourself, right? Not physically, but metaphorically. So internal perception. Yeah, so now we'll move to internal perception. So how do you view yourself? So this is a really big question, right? A lot of people have definitive scopes of themselves. I am a CEO of this company. I am the winner of this award, right? But is that really who they are? No, right? Is that award, or is that gonna leave with them once they pass away or something? No, right? So your own view of yourself, first of all, is based on your own self-respect, right? Valuing your own personal perception is based on your own views, and it's the only way to gain humility, right? In this, there's no pleasing anyone. There's no pleasing society. Because if you try to please everyone in society and society itself, it's an impossible task, right? At some point, there's going to be someone against you or someone who disagrees, and you'll never be content from this, right? So any external factors, when you have this aspect of self-respect, when you have this aspect of balanced self-esteem, right, won't affect you because you are in control of yourself. You are in control of what you think of yourself. And if you think yourself as a person who values others but also values themselves, then you'll attain an aspect of humility, right? And you will not seek appreciation from others. So being content with yourself means you won't expect from others, which will leave you to live a higher quality of life, right? That's what this series is about, right? Living a higher quality of life, right? You won't be the ant in the story, right? You'll be the ants in the colony who just they said in the beginning of the story, they're happy, right? They're all working together. They're all doing it for the benefit of the colony, right? When you learn to put others first and when you learn to value everyone, that's when you're going to get this humility and you're going to get this contentment, right? So from this, like, I personally, after this, I redefined my definition of humility, right? So I said it bases the view of one's importance, right, on their own perception of themselves. What does that mean? You control how you see yourself. So there's three main qualities I established for a humble person: egoless, right, content, and self-respect / self-esteem, right? So a humble person with themselves knows that they are valued, right? A humble person, when looking at people and others, they are indifferent to how people view them, right? People can have positive and negative perceptions, and they always will, right? But they are indifferent. And to society, they can, like, again, they are indifferent, right? They accept achievements, right? But they don't boast it. They accept what they are given and are grateful for it, but don't use it as a tool to either boost themselves or put other people down. And finally, they have no expectations for others, right? So now I have a own unique perspective on this, right? So we are all called human beings, right? So I like to think of it like we all had the same chance to come in to whatever family you came into, whatever life you came into, right? Some will call it luck, right? Some will call it blessings if you're more of a religious person, right? But despite whether you call it, right, there was some luck or blessings that led you to your life. Personally, for me, I feel very lucky or blessed. I feel very blessed because came into a life where I have not experienced many obstacles, many major obstacles, right? That being said, I have worked really hard and I have put in the work, right? And that has really translated to, uh, personally, I feel a successful life, right? I'm content with my life. But this this is like, whether you're a religious person, right? It could be a lot of people said this is God's blessings, right? But prideful and arrogant people, right? They will not call it God's blessings, right? They'll call it their own achievements, right? I can recount countless times where it was like a really stressful day, right? Where it was like a day I was about to burn out, right? Could I have possibly done it alone? No, right? But these prideful and arrogant people don't think they've done it alone, right? And that's a harmful thought, right? So my aspect on like humility, right, is like we all had the same chance to come into any birth, right? I could have been born into a poor family, right? A physically poor family or whatever. So you need to recount those blessings, right? And you need to attribute success where it's due, right? Your success is never always just you, right? It's going to be a combination, family, friends, whatever, right? So that's a big part. So on the flip side, we'll also have to leave this life eventually, right? So I want you to think about when you leave this life, right? What type of legacy you want to leave, right? Is it going to be the one that you were the most successful in school, or is it the one that you were the most humble in school? You were the most impactful on people. To demonstrate this, I kind of just want you to ask a question. Just recall to yourself, 100 years ago, who was the richest man? Anyone know? No, right? Okay, 100 years ago, who had the most positive impact on society? A few names come to mind, right? Martin Luther King, Mahatma Gandhi, right? There's so many Rosa Parks. There's so many different public figures who, instead of focusing on how successful they are, right? Instead of focusing on their pride and arrogance, which a lot of successful people do have, right? They focused on what legacy they're going to leave, right? And that's something I want you to keep in mind, right? Because at the end of the day, when you leave, right, your legacy, or what you define as your legacy, will be a result of your actions, right? And if whose legacy are you going to want? Is a prideful, arrogant person, right? Who views themselves as better than others, or someone who's views themselves equal to others, right? And views himself as basically equal to others and wanting to help others, right? So that's a big thing. So now we defined why we want to live a humble life, right? But there needs to be some action items, right? So humble lives often, these are three main things that like I came across that basically humility will allow you to do. So one, it'll make difficult decisions with ease. How is that? When you are humble, right? When you have that aspect of humility, you are content, right? And you're content with any decision, right? You know that any decision that's going to be made is going to do it for the best of society, and not society. It's going to do it for the best of yourself, right? So you're going to be like, they're going to be content with the outcome, no matter if they pass, fail, you know. Second, they're going to put others first, right? At the end of the day, we are all humans, right? Humble people acknowledge that no one is better than the other, right? And third of all, they listen. Listening skills are something that's lacking a lot nowadays, right? Because everyone wants to be heard, right? Everyone wants to be appreciated. Everyone wants to be accepted and approved, and they want their voice to be heard. But very few people have actual listening skills, right? That will help these people, right? So, lastly, so how can you change and how can you transition your life into a more where humility is a bigger part of it, right? Of course, it's not a overnight process, right? But it's going to be a slow process which require baby steps, right? So first, we have to we establish that you can't look outside for contentment, right? So you need to look inside yourself. You need to evaluate how do you view yourself, right? And you need to look inside and view yourself with respect and with a good amount of self-esteem, right? You need to value yourself. This is the first step to living a humble life, right? Because if you don't value yourself, either you're going to look for it from others, or you're going to put others down trying to look for it, basically, right? So second is you have to count your blessings, right? As I said, we're all human beings. Any of us could have been in any other seats right now, right? We could be in any other shoes, right? And I think all of us here would consider ourselves pretty grateful, right, to the upbringing we have. I know it's pretty ironic because anytime your parents would say this, right, it would go right over your head, and I'd be like, yeah, every kid gets to hear this, right? But like, if you actually take a minute and actually count your blessings, right, count what you have achieved, you're going to be immediately more content, and you're going to be immediately more humble. Just again, acceptance and like really accepting that this is a fact will go a long way. And third is be content with what you have, right? And be concerned about the legacy that you want to leave, right? A lot of people nowadays, it's all money, right? Is that money's going to go nowhere once you pass, right? So be concerned with the positive impact you have on people. Whether you have a positive impact on, say, 1,000 people your entire life, right? Or you have a positive impact on 1 billion, right? The matter of the fact is you had a positive impact on them, right? And that legacy is going to be much better than one who was prideful and arrogant and put others down at the expense of their own value, right? So pretty much that concludes it. We're just going to end with one last quote. So humility isn't thinking less of yours. Humility isn't thinking less of yourself, right? But thinking of yourself less. That's something that's really big in today's society, where people just constantly think, how does people view me, right? How do people think I am? And that's one thing. So humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less, right? You still value yourself, but you just think of yourself less, right? So don't be like the ant and the horse. Don't be like the ant, right? Who just did it for the appreciation of others, right? You want to be that person to give the appreciation, right? You want to be the one to leave the positive impact. So in reality, comparing this quote, right? Thinking of yourself less. How many times do you look in a mirror a day or try to perceive yourself, right? A lot. And what extents do we go to? There's like designer brands, there's fancy jewelry, all that fun stuff, right? There's also social status, right? That plays a big part. So if you look at these things to make you content, you'll never be humble, right? You need to look inside you and be grateful for what you have, and that'll make you content. And that will lead you to emanate a certain aspect of humility from you. So, overall, that's about it. I hope you took one thing away from today's session that you think you can implement in your life. Maybe just reflect on that. And then if you enjoyed the series, feel free to watch other videos. They're all really good. And then feel free to check out the Brahma Kumari's website if you have any further questions. And we're going to just end with a few minutes of silence.